to just say who you are.
Okay, my name is Siraj. I'm currently I'm trained as a barrister, but I'm also undertaking a PhD in Islamic history, particularly focusing on commentaries on the Holy Quran in the first 3-4 centuries of Islam.
Today you're going to tell us something about fasting. Could you tell me from an Islamic basis the importance of fasting? Why do Muslims fast?
Sure. Obviously for a Muslim, the important sources of Islam or the important injunctions and commandments are derived from the Quran and the Sunnah. The Quran is obviously the text, the holy text that we follow, and the Sunnah is the practice of the Messenger, the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him. So in the first instance, we have very strong verses in the Quran which exhort to fasting. Particularly in the second chapter of the Holy Quran, God says, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا كُتِبَ عَلَيْكُمُ الصِّيَامُ كَمَا كُتِبَ عَلَى الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. Which means, O you who believe, fasting has been prescribed upon you just as it was prescribed to those before you. And this is an implicit reference to the Jewish and the Christian faith. And then it gives the rationale for it, لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ, so that you attain righteousness or God-fearingness. And some people sometimes mistake the concept of fear or don't understand it, but it's more, rather than a fear of God, it's more about fearing to displease God. So no one wants to, when you love something, you fear, the thing you fear most is to lose it. So it's that kind of fear of losing God that you're supposed to inculcate within yourselves whilst fasting. So from the Quran, before we even get to the fast of Ramadan, which are most popularly known, initially the Quran first lays down the premise, and God says that you have to fast because this is part of the prophetic tradition throughout history. And because we believe that all prophets were sent from God with the same mission and same message, this is a continuation, a mere continuation of that practice. Later on then, the fast of Ramadan become obligated on the Muslims. This particularly happens in around the year 2 Hijri, which is 2 years after the Prophet had migrated from Mecca to Medina. That's when the fasts of Ramadan were obligated. But before this, there was a clear commandment that you have to fast, just as a prophetic practice.
What do you see as the potential benefits of fasting? Are they to strengthen your relationship with God? Are there other benefits from it?
Well, I mean, again, speaking on what the Quran says, is that the main reason that you fast is so that you attain righteousness. Now, it's common amongst philosophers and also people of faith that when you curb your desires, whatever they may be they lust, passion, even the 7 sins, your spiritual senses get heightened. And we also believe that from a Muslim perspective, when you curb your food for the sake of God, and whilst you're fasting, you're not allowed to sin, you're not allowed to backbite, you can't maintain sexual relations with your spouse, your husband, or your wife. That heightens your sense of spirituality. Particularly what one is supposed to do is be engaged constantly in the remembrance of God. And that too builds an affiliation with the Creator, who through this month, when we start the fast, we say, when we complete the fast, we say, Allahumma inni laka sumtu wa bika amantu wa alayka tawakkaltu, which means, Oh Lord, I have fasted for your sake, and I have relied upon you during this period of hunger. And so some of the main benefits are that we learn to discipline our souls. Essentially, desires come from the soul, and the passion comes from the soul. And what Islam says is that you need to keep these passions in check. You need to keep them controlled. Don't let them control you and your actions. Rather, you should be disciplined enough to be able to say what is beneficial for your soul. And similarly, the Prophet Muhammad is reported to have said that the fasting person, when he fasts, God generally throughout acts of worship, God says that I reward the faster, the person who's fasting when he fasts, and I reward him for other actions that he does, like worship and other things, charity. But the fast is specifically for the sake of God. And in one tradition, God says that I will give its reward. I will personally give its reward. in another tradition of the same in the same token, God says, "I am its reward." So, in the sense of benefit, many people see that losing weight is a benefit, and some of the more basic things that happens when someone stops eating and drinking. But generally, it's the whole concept of reliance upon God and knowing that you're doing it for His sake purely, and that you're controlling your soul and your desires and your actions. You're not lying, you're not sinning, which you shouldn't be doing anyway. But in Ramadan there is a more, and generally during fasting there is more concentration on these kind of things.